welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason, just outside Charleston, Missouri, and I am just right off U.S. Highways 60 and 62, and there is a historical marker, and many people have probably passed it and seen it on the road, but haven't really stopped and looked at it. But this is off a roadside pullout, and I'll go ahead and tell you all about it. Here we go. All right, so there is a small roadside pullout where anyone can view the marker. But this was the site of the Sharecroppers strike of 1939, and there is a marker with a lot of text on it. So let's check it out. So first off, here is this is not the marker, but I mean the historical text. And there's nothing on the back. But this tells a story of a large protest that happened here in southeastern Missouri. So this was known as the Missouri Sharecroppers strike of 1939. One wintry morning in January 1939, residents of southeast Missouri woke to find 2,000 black and white sharecroppers along two state highways. With them were their families and the few meager belongings that they owned. The sharecroppers left the Missouri boot heel cotton plantations where they lived and worked to stage a demonstration. They were protesting the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, a federal law from President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. The act reduced production of paying farmers subsidies to not plant on part of their land and to kill off excess livestock. This was to reduce any surplus in crops and to increase the market value of crops. Plantation owners were supposed to share the subsidies with the sharecroppers living on and working in the fields. However, plantation owners found a loophole in this policy and kept the subsidies owed to the sharecroppers by firing them and hiring day laborers instead. Here is a gentleman named Owen Whitfield. A sharecropper and vice president of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, was dedicated to creating better conditions for farm workers. He planned and led the demonstration and convinced the sharecroppers that this demonstration would draw public attention to their plight. Whitfield told the sharecroppers, "Take your eyes out of the sky because someone is stealing your bread." Not all the plantation owners treated sharecroppers unjustly. There was one planter, Tad Snow, who had befriended Owen Whitfield, his wife Zella, and their large family. Like other sharecroppers, the Whitfields lived in desperately poor conditions despite backbreaking labor in the fields. That is a picture of Tad Snow. So in January, as we all know, that would mean cold weather and frigid conditions. When the protesters gathered along the frigid highways in early January, hungry and cold, the American Red Cross refused to help, calling the protest a man-made disaster. The sharecroppers remained on the roadsides, huddled in tents with little to keep them warm. The demonstration attracted national attention and embarrassed the state government after reporters and photographers from major newspapers traveled to the boot heel to follow the crisis. Soon, the governor sent state troopers to load the protesters into trucks and haul them away to different sites: a levee, swampland, a churchyard, and other places, all far out of public view. And then Lorenzo Green, a professor of history at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, went to visit the demonstrators. He described what he had seen to his classes. Students were so moved that they gave up their spring prom and donated the money to the sharecroppers. In St. Louis, activist Fannie Cook also organized a committee of citizens to send relief to the protesters. The next summer, Cook's committee and the Lincoln University students donated money so the remaining sharecroppers, still led by Owen Whitfield, could buy a parcel of land, 93 acres near Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Several hundred sharecroppers, both black and white, moved to the land and built a community, which became known as Cropperville. The local sheriff warned them that he could not guarantee their safety in the face of hostility from the surrounding all-white community. Owen Whitfield could not stay with the demonstrators. Tad Snow hid Owen Whitfield in his barn for months until he could flee to St. Louis. But in the end, no bloodshed occurred. Instead, the sharecroppers began tilling the land and building houses. Although there was much hunger and sickness, even death in the beginning, Cropperville slowly began to take shape with a school, a church, and community gardens and cemetery. And here are the last two paragraphs. Within a year, changes brought about by the protests were beginning to be visible. The governor held a conference in which Owen Whitfield, the planters, and officials talked about ways to help the sharecroppers. The federal government also got involved in the boot heel, agreeing to provide new forms of assistance. Through the Farm Security Administration, they created the Delmo Homes communities, 10 villages in the boot heel for sharecroppers who needed a place to live. But time went on and the world began to change. Cropperville residents moved away to fight in World War II or to find better jobs. Finally, Owen Whitfield also moved to take a new church position. 10 years after it had begun, Cropperville was all but deserted. Though Cropperville did not endure, the roadside demonstration was still a success. For us today, the story of the sharecroppers is an inspiring example of courage in the face of poverty and injustice. Not only did this protest lead to change on the state and national level, but the sharecroppers also managed to create a better life for themselves and their children. In the words of the song that they sang during the protest, many sharecroppers did finally find freedom on freedom. Oh, sorry, freedom, oh freedom after a while. So this is what the land looks like now, and by the way, cotton is very important crop here in southeast Missouri, as I have seen cotton fields on the way over here. But here are some pictures on the marker. Sharecroppers on the highway as Owen, grandson of Owen Whitfield, with an original sharecropper. How about that? That's the barn where Tad Snow hid Owen Whitfield. It says here, Tad Snow's legacy of advocacy and compassion for the sharecroppers labor movement continues to this day through his granddaughters, who donated the land for the highway memorial marker to honor the plight of the sharecroppers. These are children sleeping. I'm going to go over here just a bit. And this is also told through, I guess, a short documentary, a DVD about the sharecroppers. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. I hope you learned a little bit of history here, especially none that you don't really see in very much textbooks these days, especially at the national level. But I hope you find this one very interesting, and I am Jason, near Charleston, Missouri, at the boot heel, signing off.